We, like I said, enjoy having everybody here, but this is business in the United States that needs to be conducted uninterrupted. So today, what we bring to you, the distinguished ranking member and I have worked hard to identify areas that really need to be probed. And today we're going to probe arguably one of the most difficult and frustrating places on the planet, and that is Africa. All of us here know that the United States has a clear national security and economic interest in the East and East Africa and the Horn of Africa region. The region borders key maritime trade routes through the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden and hosts a significant U.S. military presence at our base in Djibouti. The U.S. also conducts robust counterterrorism operations, largely focused on Somalia in partnership with Kenya and others in the region. But in recent years, violent conflicts in Ethiopia, Sudan, and Somalia have destabilized the region. These conflicts provide fertile ground for violent extremist groups like al-Shabaab, ISIS, and the Houthis. They enable malign actors like China, Iran, and Russia, and devastate local populations and U.S. national security alike. Many African nations maintain troubling ties with China, including key national security partners. Just last month, President Ruto declared that Kenya, a major non-NATO ally, and China are co-architects of a new world order. That's not just alignment to China, it's allegiance. I submit for the record the text of that speech. I'm going to enter it in the record at the conclusion of the hearing that describes this. Relying on leaders who embrace Beijing so openly is an error. It's time to reassess our relationship with Kenya and others who forge tight bonds with China. And it isn't just an embracement of China, but also the, quote, new world order, end quote. Still, there are countries where meaningful engagement is possible, but only with sober judgment and clear-eyed realism. We must stop building U.S. policy in Africa around individual leaders and instead focus on strengthening institutions, expanding private sector ties, and empowering the region's young and dynamic populations.
I think there's a lot of agreement on both sides of the aisle about the importance of Africa to the United States and the need to engage more there. The United States does have a critical role to play on the continent. Just last month, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo signed a declaration of principles on ending a brutal 30-year war. It's not quite ended yet. However, it's a positive step, and it's the result of deliberate diplomatic work that's been carried out over many years on a bipartisan basis. And I also hope you will talk about the competition for influence in Africa between the United States and China. The chairman mentioned that in his remarks. I think it's something that we're seeing. And this is a map that was done in 2023 that shows the influence of China in Africa. I wish we had the one that we had in the Armed Services Committee several years ago that compares China's impact in Africa to the United States, because they are eating our lunch there. And you can see the red is where the PRC has really put a focus on the countries in Africa. You can see the Chinese base in Djibouti. It shows the 2,000 military troops that are deployed in Africa by the Chinese, and 1,775 peacekeepers that support 4 UN peacekeeping operations, again, Chinese. So it is significant that we are not competing either militarily or diplomatically in Africa, and now on the foreign assistance front.
I have to tell you that watching President Ruto with the Chinese holding hands and talking about a new world order is just stunning. After all the work and effort we've put in there, and to see him talking about a new world order, you know, the new world order was constructed by the United States and democracies, capitalist countries that are human rights loving countries, and the new world order that these countries are talking about is being constructed by the autocracies the outright communists, socialists, people have no respect for human rights. It's stunning to hear countries talk about wanting to join or promote that world order when the world order that was constructed after World War II has served us so really well. Certainly not perfectly, but then again, the world isn't a perfect place, but so much better than what you'd see if the autocrats took over. It's discouraging to hear that, and part of it, I think, is tied to the fact that when we do things in Africa, they seem to be individual-centric instead of a country-centric. We don't focus on institution, we focus on individuals. And I don't know why it seems to be more prevalent in this part of the world than others. So if each you could take a quick run at a very complex question. So why don't you start?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree. President Ruto's comments were discouraging. They're not also out of the ordinary for the types of comments that Afghan leaders make, especially when they travel to Beijing, unfortunately. This is a challenge for the United States. I would suggest that Afghan leaders haven't always thoroughly thought through the consequences of this different type of world order, especially smaller countries that are smaller military or economic powers. The type of world order that China, Russia, Iran are advocating for would mean that they would be victimized probably in many ways. The grievances that Afghan leaders often express are focused on a few key issues, and then I think these larger powers like China, like Russia, like Iran, have co-opted those issues into their broader agenda to confront the United States. I think the U.S. Should make it clear to Afghan leaders that while, of course, they're welcome to have normal relations with these countries, especially if you're a major non-NATO ally, there are certain responsibilities associated with that. And I think the U.S. needs to be much more aggressive in its messaging, frankly, to Afghan publics and to Afghan leadership about the benefits that you laid out of the world order that the United States has underpinned for decades now.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, given your opening comments in the exchange, I'd love to work with you on clarifying the U.S.-Kenya relationship. Their foreign minister and national security advisor were just here last week meeting with the president and folks at the White House, and I agree with you that some of those statements with the PRC are very concerning given the deep and long relationship and the security relationship we have with regards to al-Shabaab in Somalia.
It's disappointing, to say the least.
You referenced how important it is that there be more students from Africa coming to the United States. Well, I've got a solution for you. It's a 15-year-old program called the Young African Leaders Initiative that has sent 20,000 vetted, promising African students to the United States. The University of Delaware happens to be one of the 20 hosting universities at a very modest cost that is about to be shut down. Not a good idea. It brings promising young African leaders to the United States for a summer to meet with businesses and entrepreneurs, to meet with civil society, to convene in Washington, and then go to 20 different states all over the country. One of many things I don't think we should shut down. To the point you just made, Ambassador Gavin, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, launched under President Bush, explicitly used corruption and combating corruption, reducing corruption as one of the key indicators for whether or not a country would get a long-term development partnership with the United States. It is all but closed. Most of its staff have been laid off. Many of its compacts have been shut down. PEPFAR, Mr. Meservey, is all but closed. It has been trimmed dramatically from its scope. A 25-year-old program, long deserving of bipartisan support. I'd just be interested in both of you briefly saying, what does it do to our reputation on a continent of 54 countries, a continent with enormous human potential and natural resources, a country that China and Russia see as the continent of the 21st century? What's it do to our place in East Africa and across the continent if we abruptly shut down these long-standing demonstrated and effective programs? Madam Ambassador, and then Mr. Meservey.
Thank you, Senator. It is incredibly self-defeating, is my view. I just don't understand why we are taking a bunch of tools in our foreign policy toolbox and tossing them into a dumpster
I think the term was a wood chipper.
Okay, I suppose so.
It's tougher to reassemble things that have been put through a wood chipper than things that have gone through a reasoned, considerable review, which
Oh,
is the
sure.
process
No,
that we
reforms
should have
make-
gone through, is
Yeah.
to have this body, Congress, work with the new administration to say, okay, trim this, reform this, change this, shutter this, expand this.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
No, it's not. And not only have we lit our credibility on fire, and you see particularly China making hay of this, the favorite phrase now is reliable partner. China's a reliable partner. They're not going to abruptly pull the rug out from under you. And I think that, some of the kind of knock-on effects, consider the tens of thousands of health workers in Kenya who are out of work now. These are educated, engaged citizens, and the messaging we want to do about this long relationship with Kenya, it's at odds with their lived experience now. And
I'm about out of time. I've got less than a minute.
Sorry.
Mr. Meservey, if I might. I do agree that a bright spot is the hard work done under the previous administration by Avril Haines in DRC, Rwanda, and it's continuing under Special Advisor Boulos. There's a real chance of peace there. I can't think of a more concentrated example of the PRC-U.S. competition than the two adjacent bases in Djibouti. I've just introduced with Senator Ricketts a bill to try and prioritize focusing on denying the PRC more basing opportunities on the continent. What do you think we ought to make a priority in doing that important work?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, and I'm very pleased to hear about the bill and your attention to this problem. I would especially highlight the danger of an Atlantic Ocean base. We know quite reliably that China has been pursuing such a base for years. It's not hard to see how problematic that would be for security of the American homeland. So I think I mentioned in my original remarks that commercial engagement should be at the heart of a strategy. And I think we need to start giving African countries more of what they want and less of what they don't. That seems like an obvious proposition, but frequently our Africa strategy doesn't seem to be guided by that principle. So the existential crisis that every African government faces is youth unemployment. Yep. And our development assistance and humanitarian assistance, as useful as that is in some contexts, is not going to address those problems. So I think
I do think that the Development Finance Corporation and the MCC really focused on private sector partnerships that fuel growth from the bottom up. I think to the extent we can focus our messaging, our investments, and our partnerships on combating corruption, on being a secure and reliable partner, and on helping create reliable, high-growth jobs, this continent of 4 billion people by the end of this century is a place where we can win in the competition with China. And if we don't, if we continue our retreat, we won't. Thank you both.